Hey friends, Simone here with Bulletproof Business Growth, as always, with some ideas and input for what to pay attention to when you are getting ready to scale your business. So, one of the things that's been coming up again and again is how to make meetings worth it. We all know we can't live without them because they are one of the most important ways to communicate with your teams. And if you don't do it right, you're wasting a ton of company time and money, because just think about that. If there's 10 people on your team, it's an hour meeting. That's 10 hours that better be worth it. So how would you make a 10-hour meeting, technically it is that, how would you make that worth it? Well, it's got to drive revenue or cost savings. Otherwise, what's the point? So one of the things that we talk about with our clients all the time is having really, really clear outcomes that you focus on in your meetings. So when you think about, what makes what makes your business clear, it's having a really, really clear vision, which is your 3-year strategic plan, and then having a way that you actually chunk that down into something that becomes tangible, achievable, measurable, so that your team actually knows what that means in shorter time frames. So we have to get really clear about the way we are achieving this, the action steps, the methods we are using. So these are not goals. Your goals are part of your vision, but these are actions. Actions are the steps that you're going to take to get from A to B. And your meetings are your platform for where you're going to prioritize, measure, talk about what's working, what's not working, and get your team on the same page so that they can actually perform for you. So these action steps are really important, that they get specific enough so we can measure them, because how else are we going to know if we're being successful or not? And that's where most team performance falls apart, because there's a lot of generalities. Nothing is being measured correctly. A lot of times you don't even know how to measure a certain thing. And if you don't know how to measure it, do you know what you're doing? Do you know what your outcome is? So we need 3 things to really drive results. We need a vision that gives us the big picture, that helps us understand where the business is going, and most importantly, that helps your team understand how they fit into that plan. Then we need the strategy for how to get there. So those are your action steps. And then we need the mindset around that, so that everybody shows up with their A game, on their A game, and that everybody drives results cohesively as a team. And that's what drives high level results. So those action steps are what drives results forward. So we need to get really clear about what they are. And when you think about it, it's like, vision, it's kind of a conceptual big piece. And then you chunk that down, you reverse engineered so that you know what that means for shorter time frames. But then we need to be even more specific, so that we take it from a year to a quarter to a week, so everybody really understands how to be on the same page. So your meetings, the other function of meetings is to drive accountability, because the only way your team is going to be accountable if they realize that you're actually tracking what's happening. Because who would repeatedly put a lot of effort into something if nobody noticed it? So one of the prime functions of your meetings is to connect your team with what's actually happening in the real world, what adjustments have to be made, and to help them understand how their roles specifically fit into the overall company initiatives and goals. So when we think about that, like I said earlier, for most companies, small or big, meetings suck. Most people love to hate meetings because they're not run properly, they're not prepared properly, and there's no clear intention for them. So I'm going to go through kind of a list of the biggest mistakes that people make in meetings that completely derails meetings, that makes them completely ineffective. And as I'm going over these pieces, over these elements, I'd love for you to compare in your mind if that's anything you're experiencing, because if you have like one or more of these behaviors in your meetings, we have a problem. So we really want to make sure that our people get smarter and not dumber from meetings, and that the accountability and productivity goes up from the meetings and not down. Because one thing that there's a ton of research that, especially in big corporate settings where a lot of people sit in meetings after meetings after meetings, people actually are dumber and their productivity goes down. So we want to make sure that that's not what's happening. So first thing is, think about, does it happen in your meetings that people get too stuck on having everything be step by step exact in the right channels all the time, so that there's absolutely no shortcuts and no flexibility? Everything is like my way or the highway. Think about that. Is that what's happening, where there's no team collaboration, no team contribution, no team input? Everything is only one way. So pay attention if you're noticing that. The second thing is, are there a lot of speeches happening in your meeting where somebody pontificates and goes on and on and on and tells a lot of stories, and everybody else is just kind of sitting there with their eyes glazed over, playing on their phone, playing on their computer, whatever it is, but you know they're not present because they have no engagement. There's just, it's coming one way. There's only one person talking. Have you ever found that when there are specific things that come up that are not on the agenda, that those get called into breakout meetings, but the breakout meetings are far too big and far too unspecific? So we love the idea of breakout meetings because we want to keep our main meetings on track. But if the committees are too big, if it's unspecific, and if there's no clear results that have to come out of these breakout meetings, don't have them. So think about this. Are you deferring too many things in your meetings without really examining, do we need to have this meeting? Are there irrelevant issues that are being brought up? A lot of times people just love to hear themselves talk, or they feel they have to contribute something, so they come up with whatever. So you want to pay attention to, are the issues that we're tackling in this meeting actually relevant? Are they relevant to our business growth? Are they relevant to our prime initiatives right now? Are they relevant to cost savings and expansion? So we want to make sure that everything we address in this very, very precious time is relevant. Another thing is, do you find that sometimes people get stuck on wanting really precise wording, where it's only one way it can be said, and there's a round and round and round that goes on, how do we say this? Just get the broad strokes down so everybody knows what it means. You can wordsmith later. So that's the fifth thing. And then the other thing is, do you often notice that something that you already talked about in another meeting that already got decided, people come back to the meeting and they want to redecide, renegotiate, and reopen questions? Now, that's a really important piece to notice, because when that happens, a lot of times this is actually a cultural problem, because you as the business owner are always going to make the last decision. So when you have a decision-making meeting, which all meetings should be, decisions should be made in that meeting. And once the decision is made, it is made. So I've just observed so many times that people who are not exactly really good team players, they will come and just deliberate to death. And we need to make sure that your team understands that they have plenty of ways to advocate for what they want to bring to the table, and their opinions are heard, they're appreciated, and they're taken into considerations when you make your decision. But once that final decision is made, it's made. And as a team player, no matter if it went your way or not, You have to be on board with that, and you have to support that decision 100%. So if you find that people keep bringing up the same issues over and over, although they have been decided before, you want to nip that in the bud, and you want to make that something that you discuss and clarify so this stops. Another thing is, do you find that there's too much caution in the decisions that are being made? Chances are you're an innovator. You're bringing something to the market that's new. You're improving. You're always looking at what's going to make things better. So if too many of your decisions in meetings are reasonable, and if you ask people to not take risks, that also will cut down on whatever people bring to the table, that they you want them to take risks, that you want them to be innovative, you want them to show up with new ideas and opinions, because that means you will keep evolving. When there's too little risk taking, when it's too reasonable, that means people will not engage in that because they're afraid that what they're bringing to the table is not appreciated. And then when you think more through this, does it happen that people don't speak up or don't make decisions or don't make suggestions because they're concerned that they don't have authority? And that's another thing that often cuts down team engagement and performance, because when people have ideas, when they want to bring something to the table, they don't know which channel to take, or if that's even appreciated, because maybe in some other job before that wasn't appreciated. So you always want to make sure that everybody understands that you want people to bring ideas to the table, even if it seems kind of crazy. And then you can always have that discussion whether it's a good idea or not. But those 8 points that I just brought up are incredibly common for derailing meetings and making them incredibly ineffective. Another piece is, you want to really think about, and I said this earlier, the only function. You should think through this all the time when you're coming up with your agenda, when you're sitting in the meeting, when the meeting gets derailed. The only function a meeting has is it should help the business generate revenue or increase cost saving. So everything needs to be focused on the part of you where we talked about the methods, the action steps, the vision before, right? That chunk that's directing the meeting, is this related to revenue increase or cost savings? We want to make sure that when you have a group of people in a meeting, that they understand that they're there to contribute. They're there to give and to receive. If they're not there to do either or both, they shouldn't be sitting in that meeting, because that means you're wasting productivity. You're wasting time where they could be doing the work. And anytime there is a meeting, you have to make the decision in the end, what has been discussed, what has been decided, so that people walk away with clear takeaways. If there's just a whole lot of talking, but no decision is being made, well, everybody will walk away with different understandings of what just happened, and that does not drive action. And the biggest thing is, think about, if you're used to leading the meeting, so you're doing all the talking, that means nobody has engagement, nobody has buy-in. So we want to make sure that all of our meetings generate great ideas, because meetings don't really generate ideas, or meetings don't generate great buy-ins, but good ideas do, innovation does, interesting projects do. So that's the kind of stuff we want to take our collaborative time to generate. So we always want to make sure that the right people are there, and that everybody who sits in that meeting is equal, because if people don't feel that way, they will not contribute. If they feel inferior, they will sit back and just let it happen. If they feel superior, same thing. They will sit back and let it happen. So we need to make sure that everybody understands we're all on the same page. We're all here to contribute, and we're all equally valuable. So those three things that are brought up: making sure that you have the right vision, that you have the right methods, that you have the right strategy to have meetings that are fully productive and make the time worth it. That's something you should think about and implement and really watch out for every single week, because your team needs that platform to get on the same page. You need that time to help them get focused. And we need to have that collaborative brain time to make sure that we all get used to, we are actually leading this business together. And that's the strategy and the mindset that everybody needs to sit with. So if that's something that's still difficult for you, or you're struggling with any of these things, we have a brand new training out there that addresses all this in detail. Go to bulletproofbusinessgrowth.com, bulletproofbusinessgrowth.com, and check out the training. You can even book a call with us if you need more help, and we will talk to you very soon. Have a great week.